Jurak Classic Whole Body Tonic is a dietary supplement, not a drug. Therefore, it is useful to affect the structure and/or function of your body in various ways, but it is not intended to and will not cure, mitigate, treat, or prevent any disease. Individual testimonials may not be everyone's experience and do not constitute scientific evidence. Jurak Corporation does not make any drug or treatment claims for its product.
The Tonic Man is here, front and center, and I am ready. And folks, thank you for being on the call. Another little snippet of the Carl Jurak story. My dad came to Canada in 1926. They came on a boat and landed in Halifax, and they took a train to go out west to Saskatchewan. And they rode somewhere between Regina and Saskatoon and finally ended up in a little one-horse town called Davidson. And they were let out, the train continued, and they were let out on a little rickety train station. There wasn't anything to see for miles around. There was nothing. I could just imagine the look on my mother's face when they landed there, thinking, where are we? What in the world are we doing here? What is this? You know, coming from Europe, it was kind of civilized, and there's buildings and streets and so on. So all of a sudden, up drives this old I think it was a 1914 Model T. And out gets this fellow, and he's somebody that my dad had arranged to pick them up at that station at that time. And he was there, and his name was Franz Tigler, and he was Hungarian. And so he drove them to this house in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing around, just one building, and there was sort of a main room, and it was in almost disrepair. And Franz was Hungarian. Thankfully, my dad lived in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and he learned Hungarian along with a few other languages, so he spoke with Franz. And here he was in the middle of nowhere, decided to get his job and his work started. He had ordered these 3 cabooses, and he converted them into bunk beds for his workmen. And, you know, every single step of the way, as I said last week, could have been the end of his formula. Because how in the world is he going to be thinking about that in the middle of doing this, in the middle of nowhere? Yes, they had a generator in that room so they could generate some electricity and some kind of a freezer or an ice box. And my mother found some frozen veal in it, and she made a veal stew. And so, you know, got things organized and started cleaning house and so on. And my dad set out to get his job done, his mandate done, his work done. And of course, again, as I said, any time along the way, it could have been the end of the formula, but he continued to think about it. And basically by that time, he had had a pretty good idea what it was going to do. And the main thing, of course, was to oxygenate and clean up the blood. That's what he had planned. That's what he really thought was going to be the key to everything. And sure enough, here we are talking 75 or so years later, or whatever it was, after he started just manufacturing it. So this was even before that, 90 years ago. He was thinking about this as something that would help mankind. And at the time, of course, when he was making it, he was doing his little batches, his little tests with his own money. He had to get herbs sent to him wherever he was able to. It took a long time. Everything was by parcel post and the mail and you know. So it was a struggle just to do that. He could have at any time said, oh, what am I doing here? You know, this mailing and sending and asking and begging and trying to find the locations where he could find the herbs he wants and so on and get good quality and so on. So it was not an easy task that he had in front of him. And he just continued, plowed away day after day, year after year. And of course, any time at all, it could have all stopped because he could have gotten fed up and said, forget this. So here they were in the middle of nowhere doing this. Oh, there's a little anecdote, of course, which is kind of funny. The workmen, some of them were these big, tall, husky Swedes and Norwegians. And, of course, my dad was, well, he was 6 feet, so he was, pretty big, but not like these guys. I mean, they were like, lumberjack, giant guys, Paul Bunyans. And, of course, every Friday they would start drinking, and they would drink themselves into oblivion, but most of them could handle it pretty good. And, of course, one Friday they got my father to come and have a few drinks, and my dad figured, oh, boy, am I in for trouble. So, anyway, he went, and they just pushed drink after drink down themselves, and they said, if we drink, you drink. So my father had to drink it down, and he drank, and finally the big guy started falling over like 10 pins, one after the other. And at the end, my dad was the only one left standing, and everybody, the next day, they couldn't figure out how can you drink like that? And well, my dad knew exactly what was coming down the pike. So what he did before he left to meet them, was he ate several tins of sardines and all the oil in them. So of course that made a nice coating in his stomach. So the alcohol took an awful long time to get through. So he never told anybody that, but they laid off him after that. But that's just a little joke that, of course, he told that story to us growing up, and it was a big laugh at the table when he used to tell it. But there are all kinds of little stories, and of course that's part of life, isn't it? But along the way, he continued to work on his formula, and he continued to think of how it could be better improved and achieve other things. And so, of course, he would work on it, as you all know, until 1943, when he finally decided to commercialize it. And I think one of the reasons was that he was giving a lot of it away. I mean, it was coming out of his pocket, and he really couldn't afford it anymore, so he had to, start asking some people for a little bit of money, and so he just decided, well, I'll make it commercially speaking. And so for the first 2 years, he didn't even have a company. He just manufactured it and bottled it, and during the war, he couldn't get bottles, so he bought bottles at the used bottle place and had them sterilized and used those bottles. And so then that took off because of the results that people were getting. And so in 1945, he created his own company, which he called Matol Research, M-A-T-O-L Research, and that's the name I used for the company we started in 1984 to make the KM product. And of course, my dad started his company, and all of a sudden it grew by leaps and bounds. And so it was well on its way to solving a lot of problems just locally, so to speak, province of Quebec, Ontario, here, there, a few other places. Some Americans were driving across to pick up whatever they could. Word of mouth got around. And as I mentioned last week, there is a lady that was in the northern Michigan. She was a youngster when there was a salesman around that neck of the woods selling the Matol. And so we're going to have her on the call as a guest speaker in a couple of weeks. And when we do hear from her, she'll tell us about how that was. And that was really something when I heard that, because I have not met anybody that drank the Matol. I mean, I haven't spoken to anybody for years and years. I remember them coming around the house when Dad was making it, and I met some of the people who were distributors and agents and so on, but not to speak of. And later on, as I took over in the 60s, I contacted some of them and tried to keep that business going. But, when you have an organization and it's rolling, and then all of a sudden you leave it and it starts to disintegrate, it takes some time to rebuild it. And at that time, that's when my dad said, Anthony, just leave it, go and finish your education, get a good job, and never mind this. So again, there's another reason why it could have been dropped at any time. So what is the reason that we're still here? What is the reason? It only can be because this stuff works. Look, if it did not work, even the best salesperson could sell a bottle or 2 or 5 or 10. But if it didn't work, people would be bringing it back. They'd be screaming, complaining. So this flat out works. And what amazes me is that with the tens of thousands of people that drank this and have had incredible results, why is it that word has not got out that 200 million other Americans are not drinking this and getting rid of their health issues? Why is that? That is the key, folks, and that's what I am continuing to do tonight and every day, because I know that this is what these folks need. As our mission states, give the people of the world what they need before they know they need it. And they do not know they need it until later on in life. A lot of people who are younger will not take it because they say, I don't need it for people who are sick. But it's not for people that are sick. It's to keep you in good repair. It will repair you if you're in poor repair, but it is better to take it and not get to that state. But that's a tough one to convince a youngster or people 30, 40, even up to 50 years old, who everything is fine. They have energy. They have a few little aches and pains, but nothing much. And so it was when my dad told my mother, Helena, you give the boys the preparation. As he said, give the boys the preparation. And, of course, when I first tasted it the first time, I thought it was terrible. Like a lot of people today think it's terrible. Although today we've sweetened it up a bit, we've put a little flavor in it, and it's not too bad comparatively speaking. But even the KM product was terrible compared to the JC Tonic. And my dad's product originally was pretty tough to take. He used to bring in cherry concentrate from Yugoslavia. And he added that in, and that helped a lot for the taste. But by and large, people get used to it or mix it with something because, again, if it works, then you just get by the taste. And now today, after many years, many, many thousands of people actually don't mind the taste. Some even like the taste. And we've seen some youngsters at 8 years old take it and drink it down and not bat an eyelash. So let not the taste be something to stop you. You want to be drinking this at least the 1 ounce a day for the duration, because you'll have a tremendous quality of life. And I can tell you that because that's what I did. We have guests who come on like Lenny last week to tell you how terribly, terribly ill he was and how he just is a new person. Totally new person. And that's because he was drinking this because he was ill. Now, how about a person like me, for example, who drank it because I was not ill? But, I have to tell you a secret. I started because of a health condition. I started getting pimples. And, I had one here and one there, and I would bust it like youngsters do. But it was more and more and more. So I said, Dad, what'll I do? I got these pimples. And he says, drink the preparation. And I think I tried again at the time, but I didn't like the taste, and I said, can't take this. And just about that time, when I was 10, my sister got married to a physician and a surgeon, and he saw me, unhappy about my pimples that were getting more and more. He says, don't drink that snake oil. He said, I'll give you the good stuff. So he gave me ointments and creams and soaps and pills and everything. I developed a case of acne. I'm telling you, my face was covered, my chest, my back. I was busting pimples left, right, and center. And around about 12, I really started understanding what girls are. And I said, Dad, what'll I do? He says, son, I told you, drink the preparation. Finally, I decided, look, all that stuff that my doctor brother-in-law is giving me is useless, and it may even be making it worse, but I know one thing, I'm a pretty unhappy guy. And I used to go to the beach, I kid you not, and I would always lie on my stomach so people would not know who the pimple was. That's the way I thought about it. So I understand a lot of people with skin problems and other problems, and I went through that myself, and that is a worst time of your life. When you have that kind of problem in your childhood, those kind of things can stay with you and mark your character and personality forever. And I don't know what it was, but I decided, that's it, I'm going to try it. And so I drank. And I drank every day. And you guess what? Yeah, you know. 3 months later, I didn't have nary a pimple. They were all gone. And my skin was like the moon. It was full of craters. I was picking and poking for a year. And that cleared up within another 3-6 months. Say inside of a year, my skin was perfect. You couldn't even tell that I had it full of craters. And that's because your skin can rejuvenate just as everything else in your body. And of course, when you're young, it can rejuvenate even better, faster, quicker, because it's just much easier. It has less scar tissue to go through. So that also, I think, affected my brain, because I looked at the mirror and I said, holy cow. And I saw all of a sudden it was no longer lying on my stomach. I was lying on my back at the beach and looking at the girls and talking to the girls. And boy, did I have a life. And I'm telling you, it would have not been the same at all. And my personality would be totally, totally different if I had have gone through that, because people tend to go into themselves and are embarrassed or not happy about the way they look and so on. And I can understand what Lenny was going through. Did you see those pictures of Lenny we sent you? A lot of you were saying it can't be true that he was that bad. Well, imagine what that would do to the character of a person, and Lenny had to live with this for years. Of course it will affect you. And then when you get out of it, it's like, golly, it's being reborn practically. And I felt the same way. Now, it was nothing compared to what Lenny went through, but in my little young life, it was like a disaster. So I came out of it, and I got smart, and I continued to drink it. And so as I drank it, I kept noticing that everything is better. I had always lots of energy. I was always laughing and always smiling, and it was easy to talk to the girls, and I could focus, and school was pretty good, and the sports were pretty good, and not that there were a lot of children who didn't go through all that, but those children and friends of mine from those days, they've long passed. Long. They started kicking the bucket at 50 years old with heart attacks and so on. Is it possible that because I've been drinking this all these years that I have not succumbed to those kind of things? Look, what else could it be? And we have other proof. There are people who have been drinking this now for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and they are looking younger, and they no longer go to the doctor like they used to, and they no longer have all kinds of problems, and they're tired and no energy and this and that. We have people right up until 85 years old who have been drinking this for back in the 80s. So, it has to work. Well, look, I know it works. You know it works. What we want to do is we want to make sure everybody around you knows it works. I mean, my dad had a network of distributors. That's how that fellow ended up in northern Michigan somewhere. And that's how my dad's business grew by leaps and bounds, because word of mouth is the way to do it. And when you can get the ear of a friend of yours and who is suffering, it is your duty to tell them that there's something like this around. They will be forever grateful. Just try it. A lot of people I talk to, they get well, and then they don't say anything to anybody. And I say, how come you don't tell people how great you feel? Because when you were not feeling great, you were telling everybody how terrible you felt. How come now you don't tell them? Isn't that strange? That's something to do with our human psyche, I guess. But if everybody paid it forward, which is a very, very kindly thing to do, pay it forward. Let someone else know and feel the benefit what you got. And let me tell you, there's no shortage of people in this world, in this country, that's for sure, because everybody is sick. No one is happy. Everybody's withering away in problems, taking all kinds of medication, nothing working. Wow, you certainly could help out. And look, if you each only got 10 people, and they each only got 10 people, remember that old thing. 2 will tell 2, it's 4. If you tell 2 more, it's 8. And then all of a sudden, exponentially, you've covered the globe. You can do it. We need your help to get the word out, folks. Okay, everyone. Have a great rest of the evening, and don't forget, take an ounce and feel the bounce. See you next week.